Hey, it's Barrett with Espresso Outlet. Today I have the DF64V in front of us. The V stands for variable speed. So I wanted to go over just kind of the variable speed portion of this grinder and really how it should be used versus maybe some of the ways that people are trying to use it out of the box. So the variable speed really offers the most benefit when you're trying to run it on like a filter setting. And when you run it on that filter setting, when it's running at a slower speed, you're getting less fines. You're going to get a little bit more clarity that you're looking for in that drip cup of coffee. Now, when you're running it on a slow speed with espresso, you're really not gaining that much out of it. And a lot of people, what they do when they pull this out of the box is they'll throw it on 600 RPM. They'll get a medium to light roasted bean and put it on a fine setting, and it stalls the grinder. Well, this grinder, and really pretty much all grinders similar to this that have the variable speed, they're not made to go very slow. Now, you will hear people say that they run other grinders just quite slow. Well, they're usually a conical grinder. So some of these conical grinders, I mean, they run much slower than this, 100 RPM, and they're really made for that very, very, very slow RPM. Really what we're trying to achieve here is get a little bit of variable speed for your espresso and being able to slow down that grinder quite a bit for your pour over method. So let's take a quick look. I'm gonna talk about where I run for each of these. Okay, so first let's talk about espresso. Espresso I really consider between the setting of probably 10 and 25 in the front. So that's usually where your espresso is going to land. You might have some really dark beans that run a little bit different, or some really fresh beans that run a little bit different. Now, typically, I run my espresso at 1,000 RPMs or higher. So that's from 1,000 to 1,800. I really find the sweet spot for me is about 1,200 RPMs. And honestly, I wouldn't really go much less than 1,200 RPMs with espresso. You're really not gaining a whole lot by having a much slower turning grinder. Now, you will see people say they have these grinders that go just really slow, 100 RPM. Well, those are conical burr grinders, and they operate quite a bit different than this grinder. And really where those are gonna excel, in my opinion, is with the drip anyway. But in this case, we're just talking about the V. I really recommend 1,000 RPMs plus, and between settings, I would say about 10 to 25 for your espresso, give or take. So that's the espresso portion of the DF64V. I recommend hot dosing. If you're not familiar with what hot dosing is, I typically weigh my beans off to the side, turn the grinder on, and then dose them as it's running. It's actually running right now. And what that does is it takes a lot of the wear off the motor. You're not gonna get as big of a potential to stall. I have done a lot of testing, and I have been able to cold start the motor even at fairly low RPMs. But again, it really depends on the density of your beans. So if you have those very dense, very light beans, it's gonna be much more difficult to do that. Now, if we were gonna talk about doing some drip settings, we can really slow this down. And this grinder, it's able to go as slow as 600 RPMs, and I really do enjoy, if I'm gonna do a drip, between the 600 and probably 800, even as high as 1,000. And believe it or not, I can tell a pretty big difference slowing this down, especially on the drip. And this is where that variable RPM is going to really excel. And I really find that 600 to 1,000 RPM range to be best, probably between your upper setting of 90 and probably not going below 50, maybe 45. And again, it's gonna depend upon the density of the bean on how it's gonna perform. I really recommend doing the hot dose again. It's gonna be much easier on your grinder. You're not gonna stall it quite as easily. You shouldn't really stall it at all with the new updated boards. The original boards, they were set very conservatively. They were concerned about protecting the motor, and then that caused some issues with people stalling the motor again and again. So they went back to the drawing board, they made some changes, and they've updated these control boards. Now, I've done some testing, and I've even done cold starts at fairly low RPMs, even on an espresso setting, and this grinder has really performed fine for me. I'm not gonna tell you that it's gonna do it every time. It does have stall protection, So if it does stall, don't worry. Some people, they think that their grinder is stalling, but it's actually not stalling. So when they turn on the grinder, let's say they're going to do a cold start. So they put the beans in before turning it on. It'll actually adjust the RPM high enough to get the motor running. And then it's going to back it off to the slower RPM. And that's really just to give that motor a boost to get this grinder going. And it's just how it's designed. It's not stalling. Now, let's say your grinder does completely stall. So it just completely stops. You hit the button. It's not turning on. You don't know what to do. What you need to do, make sure that your button is off. And we're going to remove this whole upper carrier. And you can see other videos about this. And what you need to do is you need to pull off this burr carrier, empty out all the grounds in there, put it back together. And then the most important step that is a little bit confusing is you need to unplug your grinder, wait a few seconds, and then plug it back in. And what that's going to do is that's going to reset the stall protection. So the only way to reset it, there's no button, anything like that. Simply just unplug it and replug it back in. So if you're having any issues with your DF64V, I think that this video should get you through 99% of them, at least in my opinion. If you have any other questions or issues, you can definitely reach out to us at espressooutlet.net, or you can comment on this video below. But it's better to send us an email because we're going to see that much sooner than a message on YouTube. So thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoy your DF64V. I have two of these now. I have a silver one, and it's actually a prototype one, so it's built a little bit different. This is actually the final production one here, and I can tell you I really like the final production. There's really not that much difference between them, but mine had different display on the side, had a different button on the inside, slightly different control board. So this one, I just love it so far. It has the updated cup. So pick one of these up. You can head over to espressooutlet.net or turngrinders.com. Thanks for watching.